Hi, and welcome back to the Bees Business, or welcome if you are new here. In today's vlog, we are talking all things houseplants. Throughout this vlog, I will be sharing with you tips and tricks to help you keep your houseplants healthy. I will also be highlighting some of my favorite houseplants that I feel would be great for beginners. Let me share a little bit of backstory about how I came to be the houseplant enthusiast that I am today. During my third year teaching, I switched to a different school within the district where I began my career. With this switch came the opportunity to meet new colleagues, one of which was my partner teacher. It did not take long for us to hit it off, and it also did not take me long to observe that she has quite possibly the greenest thumb of anyone that I have ever known. Most of the knowledge that I have today about keeping houseplants healthy and happy, I learned from her. And many of the plants that you'll see around my home today originated as clippings that she gave to me. Before we get too much further into this vlog, I will note that it is important if you are planning to add any new houseplants to your home to think about the pets that are in your home and if these houseplants could be toxic to them. The research about which plants are toxic to animals can get a little bit murky, so I will not be giving any guidance on that in this vlog. Now let me take a moment to catch you up on some of the plants that we've already seen. At the very beginning of this video, the Oxalis triangularis, or purple shamrock, was featured. This plant is also sometimes referred to as the false shamrock. It is an uncommon plant with nearly black foliage, but in reality, it is a very deep purple. The leaves are triangular and they typically grow in groups of 3. At night, the leaves fold up like little umbrellas and they open again with the morning light. Next up, you saw a plethora of little spider plants growing roots in my propagation station. Next, you saw an African violet that I received as a gift from a student over 4 years ago, and it is still doing wonderful today. You then saw the Oxalis regnelli, or the green shamrock, which is the exact same plant as the purple shamrock, just in the green variation. You then saw a bit of an unlikely duo. I have a spider plant and some Swedish ivy that are paired together. Their roots got all bound when they were in the propagation station, and I just opted to let them stay together. And now that we are all caught up, you are viewing a bonsai tree. This little tree is one that I rescued from Lowe's on the $1 rack several years ago, and it has been doing pretty well since then. Both of the Oxalis, my propagation station, and my African violet live on the windowsill above my sink. Here we have a Crassula ovata, or a jade plant. The jade plant is a succulent, which means it holds water in its leaves. If you are not familiar with succulents, they are any plants that have thick fleshy tissues that are intended to store water. My jade plant is a happy lady. You can see lots of little bits of new growth on her, which I always enjoy seeing because it is a reminder to me that I am doing a nice job caring for her and meeting her needs. Most succulents do best in bright, direct sunlight. Here's another look at that little unlikely pairing. This spider plant here is also known as a Chlorophytum comosum, and it prefers medium sunlight. The spider plant is a great beginner houseplant. I will share more about Swedish ivy later on in the video. This immaculate beauty is the Philippine evergreen. You can see here she has been with me for quite some time and has collected some dust along the way. So today she got a bath in the sink where I just gently hosed off and wiped each of her leaves so she could do her very best soaking up all the sunlight she needs for photosynthesis. And I feel it only right to properly introduce you to her. Her name is Francesca. Yes, I am that crazy plant mom who names some of my plants. I would love to hear from you. Do you name any of your plants? She has hung in this very window since I brought her home, and she has over tripled in size. Also in our dining room are a couple of other spider plants as well as a pothos plant. Now, this next beauty is another Lowe's rescue, so she is in a little bit of rough shape. We're working on it. We're trying to get her nice and healthy. You'll see me doing some cleaning of her leaves in this video, as well as some trimming of some of the sections of her leaves that are not doing well. I don't really know this to be the best way to care for her damaged sections, but it is what I naturally felt I should do, and so I've been doing this for a little while and it has been working. so that she is able to have just those green sections remaining. And I believe she is a corn plant. That is something that's also up for debate because since she was a rescue from Lowe's, she did not come with any identifying tags. As I'm continuing to care for this plant, I want to start sharing with you some of the tips that I have. My number one recommendation for any level houseplant lover, whether you feel like you are a novice or well experienced, is to invest in a hygrometer. A hygrometer is going to allow you to quickly assess whether your plant really does need to be watered or not. You can stick it down deep in the soil, so even if you're just feeling the top layer of soil with your fingers and it's feeling dry, a hygrometer is going to be able to tell you what's going on further down by the roots of your plant. I have an inexpensive one from Amazon that I really enjoy, and I will link that for you in the description box. Another tip that I have for you when you are looking to add new houseplants to your home, first purchase from a reputable location and be sure to check the plant over well before committing to purchasing or bringing it into your home, checking for any pests or eggs. If a plant does have any pests or eggs or questionable looking things going on with it, it doesn't mean that you can't purchase the plant. It just means you're going to need to be aware that something is going on with it, and it's best to quarantine that plant before you introduce it into your home near any of your other existing plants. During this quarantine period, you're going to want to keep your potentially sick plant on its own so that it does not spread anything to any of your other houseplants if you already have some, and you will want to try to investigate what you can do to alleviate the pest that is on the plant. If you have concerns that you may have a problem going on with a plant, either one that you're introducing into your home or one that you've had and you are just noticing it may be experiencing an issue, there are a lot of guides available out there on Google, on Pinterest, on a variety of locations that can help you field what might be going on with your plant as well as some possible remedies. Right before viewing this beautiful pothos plant, you saw a couple of spider plants in my dining room. Now we're taking a couple of glances at Francesca again because her beauty is just captivating and she is definitely one of my favorite plants, but don't tell the others. The most abundant houseplant that I have in my home is the spider plant. I have both the non-variegated version that has solid green leaves as well as the variegated version which has the lighter green striping down the middle of the leaves. Spider plants are common, they are also easy to care for, but I love having them around my home because they do produce all sorts of these little babies when they are happy, and those babies can be plucked off and put into water where they will root, and then you can plant them and they make for a great gift to share with others. This precious plant is the goldfish plant. As you can see, the flowers kind of resemble a goldfish, and that is where it gets its name. Goldfish plants are considered easy to care for, they are drought resistant, and with proper care they can bloom all year. They prefer a bright indirect light. Did you know that it is better to underwater versus overwater your houseplants? This may be a surprising tip for you, but most plants can actually recover faster from being deprived of water than if they are given too much water. Let's talk fertilization for a minute because I've had a few people say to me that they are hesitant to have houseplants because they're just not sure how to fertilize them and keep them happy and whatnot. And essentially, you can skip the fertilization step. If you are meeting your plant's other requirements to grow, then fertilization really isn't necessary for houseplants. And just as it is better to underwater versus overwater your plants, it is better to skip fertilization than over-fertilize, which may actually end up killing your plant. Another tip: once you have found a place where your plant is happy and it is showing that it is doing well, let it stay there. They get used to their surroundings and they don't really love to be moved, and they also do not love fluctuation in temperatures if you can avoid that. A watering tip: water your plant deeply versus lightly and frequently. A great way to judge this is to watch the water as you are pouring it onto the soil. When you notice that it is no longer draining down into the soil, that's a good indication that you have sufficiently watered it deeply and it is time to stop. Another really important thing for houseplants is to make sure that they are in a pot that can drain so that their roots are not left in a puddle of water where they could begin to rot. Let me catch you up on some of the plants that you are seeing now. This is a Thanksgiving cactus. This is a pothos plant. This next pretty that you're about to see is an anthurium, sometimes also referred to as a flamingo lily. This is my second anthurium. My first one unfortunately did not make it. It was exposed to cold temperatures when we were doing some home construction, and a wall was being worked on during the winter months, and it didn't get moved in time, unfortunately, and it suffered greatly. I was able to actually get it back from this experience, but then Hank got to it and knocked it down one too many times, and it just couldn't come back from that. You just saw another spider plant and some aloe vera, and now this is a geranium. In the zone where I live, I'm sure you can tell, we have snowy cold winters, so geraniums are considered annuals, but I like to bring mine inside and keep them alive and growing when I can. Here is an aloe vera plant. It is doing okay. It has suffered the wrath of Hank, which you will hear a little bit more about later on in this video. Aloe vera plants require a minimum of at least 6 hours a day of direct sunlight. All of the plants in this area were victim of an attack from Hank, which, like I said, I'll tell you more about. So this geranium is looking pretty small and is working on regrowing. This inch plant is aptly named because when conditions are favorable, it will grow at a relatively rapid rate. Here is another look at the difference between the Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter cactus because it is very easy to get them confused. Here you are seeing an Easter cactus. There are several points of new growth on this Easter cactus. I always love to take a look at the growth. It just lets me know that the plant is happy, that it enjoys the way I am caring for it, and it's that reminder to keep doing what I'm doing. When this Easter cactus is in bloom, it has the most beautiful orangish pink flowers. Another tip that I have, don't be afraid to prune your plants. From the coworker that taught me so much about houseplant care, she said something along the lines of, I never check out my plants without scissors in hand. And what she meant by this is she brings scissors along with her, knowing that as she's looking over her plants, she's going to prune them, and snipping off little dead bits or pieces that aren't looking so great is going to help your plants be their healthiest. Another tip is rotate your plants so that they grow evenly. As you're noticing that your plants are becoming lopsided and they're leaning toward that window to soak up as much sunlight as possible, spin them around so that they start leaning in the opposite direction and evening themselves out, and the whole plant can be its healthiest. Also, when you are selecting houseplants for your home, be sure to choose ones that are a good fit for the area that you want to place them in. Know if you have direct or indirect sunlight, and choose plants with corresponding needs. All soil is not created equal, so be sure to choose a good quality soil for planting your houseplants in. As promised, here's another look at the Swedish ivy. This one is beautiful, but in slightly rough shape. It is another one that experienced the wrath of Hank and has been knocked down a few too many times, but it is persevering, and I am doing my best to get it back to a nice healthy state. You can see lots of beautiful, fresh green new growth. This is a plant that is very easy to care for and is excellent for beginners as well. This vibrant beauty is an orchid. Of the plants that I've cared for, orchids have been some of the more challenging ones. What I have come to learn is that they are very finicky about their location. They do not like to be moved, they do not like to be repotted, and they certainly do not like to be overwatered. Another important thing to note about the orchid is that it has roots that grow up into the air and out of the pot. These are called air roots, and there's nothing you need to do with them. Just let them grow and do their thing. Now, typically when you buy an orchid at the store, it's going to be loaded down with these beautiful flowers. The trick is to get these flowers to come back after the first round has fallen off. And lighting is going to be very important to accomplish this. If you have insufficient light, your orchid is likely not to rebloom. This sad-looking but determined stick in the mud is really a ficus or a fiddle leaf fig. It experienced some colder temperatures, got rather frustrated, dropped all of its leaves, and was simply a stick in a pot of dirt. And in my true plant-loving heart, I just could not let it go. Something was telling me to give it time, so I did just that, and after giving it copious amounts of time, months, I started to see some of these little tiny green buds, and eventually we got some beautiful green leaves. It has still not made a ton of progress since the time of filming, but it is growing, and so I will continue to give it time. Here is another sprig of the Swedish ivy. This did come from that plant that you saw before. It broke off when that original plant fell. I was able to root it, and now it is growing in its own pot. And rounding out the cactus family, here is my Christmas cactus. I do have one of each type of cactus in my home that actually wasn't any sort of goal that I set and was just a random thing that worked out. These are some of the newest houseplants that have joined the ranks here in my home. They are both succulents and they will be repotted in time, but I'm letting them just adjust to this new space and see how they do before I put them through the process of repotting. It is a few weeks later now, and I am going to do some repotting of not only those succulents, but a few other plants as well. I spent the last couple of weeks rooting a couple of succulents. This one is doing great, so it's gone into this pot. And these ones are doing well also, but they're a little past ready. You can see their little roots. They're a little sunken in. They aren't normally like that, but they're just ready to have some soil and not just be hanging out with just the moisture that they are getting in this cup. So they really need to get into this little pot. This bamboo plant and spider plant that I have had in a little propagation container for quite some time, and as a result the spider plant's roots have grown all around the bamboo shoot, so they're quite good friends, it seems. So I'm going to leave them together and see how they do, and we will plant them in this little pot for now. They will probably need a bigger pot pretty quickly, but this will get them started. Here's where we have ended up for now. I discovered that these little round ones, 4 of them, fit perfectly side by side in these rectangular boxes. So that is how I have chosen to use them, because I really like the idea of being able to take each individual plant out if I need to, either to give it a spot with more sunlight or for whatever other reason. I just like that idea that I can care for them more individually than if I were to just plant straight into this rectangular box. So this one is full with the succulents that I had that were rooting in the window, as well as some spider plants. These had all, and oh, let me not forget the little bamboo. These had all been in my propagation station for quite some time, and they had been desperately asking to be planted in actual dirt. So today was the day to accommodate those needs. One more little cluster of spider plants here. This one gave me a bit of a hard time trying to get it down in there. Some of its roots are still poking out. I'm gonna just keep an eye on it, see how it does. I can adjust it in the pot if I need to, but then I do have 3 vacant pots at the moment, which is perfect, because over here at my now cleaned out propagation station, I do have 2 more plants that are rooting. This is a piece of a goldfish plant. It broke off of the mother plant when I was caring for it the other day, and I absolutely love goldfish plants, so I would be happy to create a second one and or gift it to someone. And then Swedish ivy. This is a piece of Swedish ivy. It broke off of not even the mother plant. It broke off of a clipping from the mother plant, so it's 2 generations removed from the mother plant, and actually the mother plant was a clipping from someone else's plant, but I'm calling it the mother plant in my home because it is what has created these other little offspring. So it is the mother plant in this house. But I do really like Swedish ivy. I have had success with it, so I could have thrown this little bit out, but I decided I would give it an opportunity to try to root. So it just went in today, and the piece of goldfish plant just went in yesterday or the day before. So those are working on rooting. And then over here, I have one more succulent. This one had actually fallen down into the bottom of this container when the other 3 pieces were working on rooting, and I just figured, oh, it's gonna die down there because succulents are not supposed to be, or they don't do well when they're fully submerged in water like that, or even when the bottom portion of them that you're trying to get to root are completely soaked in water. You can tell that the water is not touching the bottom of that little piece of succulent. It really just wants the moisture. So little hack on rooting succulents. And I had already had the other 3 in here doing their thing, and I just didn't want to take them all out just to get the one piece from the bottom. So I made peace with letting it go, but then when I took care of them today and gave them their pots, I noticed that this one was actually doing pretty well down in there. Not making roots, of course, but it was alive and looking plump, so I decided I would give it a shot, and I just put the little system back together and popped this one on top. So we'll see. It may get added to one of those other pots over there that has its siblings. So that's where we're at with getting some of our little propagated sections of plants planted or potted this morning. I also have no idea if these were really intended for use or if they were just meant for little decor items. Either way, I enjoy them. I almost tossed them in the beginning because I just thought I'm not going to use those, and then I decided to hang on to them because these small pots, I just thought maybe I will actually use them, and they were pretty handy today. So I've cleaned them off. I'm going to let them dry, and then I'm going to just stick them right back over there with those little pots kind of as a decor piece, but also a decor piece that can be functional if I need it to be. This has been my steadfast tote of soil for many years now. When I get low, like I am right now, I just go to my local greenhouse and I pick up a bag of my preferred soil and I plop it right back in here. And by keeping this lid on it and we keep it down in the basement, we've never had any issues with like anything happening, any bugs or any growth of anything. So I just keep buying the same soil because clearly it's working for me, and that's how I house it. But this soil has been in here for over a year. I haven't had a lot of plants that I've needed to repot or pot initially as of late, so I just haven't gone through this soil all that quickly. This is from a plant that unfortunately did not make it, and it is a very different soil than this one, so I'm keeping them separated for that reason, but I do think this is still potentially good soil, so I didn't want to just get rid of it. It's got much more of like a mossy texture to it, so there was a succulent in it, and so I think that if the succulents that I planted in my regular dirt, if they don't really love that, then I will have this as a backup. So that is what the dirt bucket's looking like. And that is a scoop over there, but as you saw today, I just used the pot itself because it was small. And now the whole plan with these is that they will go hang out in some windowsills in my living room, because that is a location where Hank does not go in our home and will not have as easy access to them to knock them over. He is getting better about his plant issues. I don't even know what to call them. If you've seen any of the shorts on my channel, a lot of them are of Hank, and we've talked about his mischievous side quite a bit, and he has just been known for knocking down plants in our home and making giant messes with the soil, and really we can't figure out why it's always plants, and because he doesn't do anything with the soil afterwards. So anyway, we don't know why he does it, but I have learned that if I care about my plants, which I do, I need to put them in a location that Hank cannot easily access them. So they're headed to the living room where they should be safe. We have a couple of windows in our living room. We have this double situation going on there, and then that one over there. And they clearly don't get exactly the same amount of light. This is the window that gets the most light, so I am going to put these freshly planted babies over there so they can get a good amount of sunlight, and I'm going to move the box that's already there over to one of these windows, and then they will rotate out as I see that they need more or less sunshine. But that's going to be my strategy for still utilizing the space that I have, even when it's not the most ideal sunshine-wise for my plants. And actually, I need to take these poor babies back to the kitchen with me and give them each some more soil, because these were some of Hank's recent victims and I did not give them new soil. This guy actually needs his own pot, because Christmas cactus and an aloe plant, I don't really think they are gonna do great together. So he's gonna go into one of those vacant pots, but I didn't give them new soil because I was concerned that he would just go ahead and do it again. So it's been a little bit, but they were amongst his last round of victims. So they need some more soil and a little TLC. So I'm gonna bring them to the kitchen and take care of that. Okay, these babies have received a little bit of TLC. So the aloe plant is on its own. The Christmas cactus is hanging in there. It does have some new growth, so it's trying to be happy, but those wrinkly little leaves show that it isn't actually super happy at the moment. But it got some good water today, fresh soil, so hopefully that will perk it up. Same with this spider plant. It's kind of like, oh, I'm trying, but I'm giving up. So again, hopefully the water and the fresh soil will help it out. And this guy, I'm a little bit sad about this one. That's Brandon's old wedding band. It was never like the real one. It wasn't the one that we had at our wedding. It was a cheapy like stand-in one that he could wear when he was doing work stuff, so that it wouldn't, his real one wouldn't get messed up. But anyway, I don't really know why it's on this plant. He stuck it on there one day and I've just left it. But this plant was one, oh, there goes another leaf. This plant was one that I rescued from Lowe's. It was $1 at the time of rescue because it was not looking great. So I brought it home and I stuck it in a cup that I had from Japan. If you're new around here, you may not know that my grandmother and grandfather lived with my dad and my aunt in Japan for a couple of years while my grandfather was in the military and they were stationed over there. So a lot of items came back with them and have made it down to me at this point, and I do really enjoy them. So I had rescued this plant and then put it into one of those mugs from Japan. And in Hank's round of chaos and destruction with plants, he knocked this particular one down and that mug broke, which was frustrating. I do have others, so I'm remaining thankful for that and focusing on that. But the plant itself was very traumatized by the experience of being knocked down, and it actually ended up getting knocked down twice in just a couple days. And it dropped so many leaves, so many. As you saw, a lot of them just looked like that. They just got all brown and dried up and dropped. And so it does have some remaining green leaves, but I'm nervous about it because it used to be so full of leaves all through these bare sections. So I'm hoping that by giving it some TLC and by being extra careful that it doesn't get knocked over by Hank again, I'm hoping it will rebound nicely and come back. Final update on the plants. I realized that I had these two succulents in their temporary pots that I bought them in that larger one down there on the bottom. So I potted them in their permanent little containers until they show me that they're outgrowing them, which they may not because they are succulents. So hopefully they're gonna be happy in there. They are some of the ones that suffered Hank's antics. So this one fared better than this one. This one, it's looking a little funky right now. It is also a curly kind of succulent, so that's part of the reason it's looking funky. But anyway, they have been potted in their permanent pots next to that spider plant that I talked to you about. And then we have these guys that we've already discussed. So those two containers are there on the windowsill. And then over here, there's that pot that I took those two succulents out of. Didn't do anything with the geranium today. I just moved the cactus from over here to up here. This is where those two succulents had been. The cactus was looking like it would like a little more sunlight, so moved him over there. Aloe vera plant, and oh, I'm forgetting the name of that one, but I will insert it when I remember it. And then this little cluster of plant friends over here. So that's how the green babies are looking in the living room. I hope that you've enjoyed coming along with me as I have given you some tips on keeping houseplants happy and a stress-free part of your life. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing the houseplants that I have and also going along with me as I repotted several of them. I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Bye.